Yesterday, we learned that good readers preview a text before they read. So today, we are going to be reading Handout 6D, Getting Around. We need to be sure to underline the title. The title is Getting Around, which makes me think that maybe this text is going to be all about how the Nez Perce got around or they traveled. So I'm going to write a question out to the side. Is this all about travel? Down here is the title again. And this is informational text. So I also learned yesterday that when an author is telling us information, they use text structure to organize that information. So I remember that there are different types of text structure. One is description, and I can ask myself, is this describing or telling me about something? If it's cause and effect, I can ask, is this telling why something is happening? Problem and solution answers the question, is this stating a problem and saying how it's solved? Chronological order and sequence, is this telling the order of events? And compare and contrast, is this telling how things are alike and different? So the first step to finding the text structure is I actually have to read the text and figure out what the topic is. So I'm going to put topic over here so that I remember to put the topic. Then if I look down at the bottom, there's two words in my glossary, parfleche and travois. So I'm going to find those. And travois. All right, so now I'm ready to read. The Nez Perce made large bags or suitcases like envelopes to store and carry their food and clothing. Parfleche, pronounced parfleche, were made from hides and were often beautifully decorated. I know that hides come from animals. So I think that they must have used the animals in their homeland to help. I also don't really know what parfleche is, but I'm going to use context clues to realize that parfleche must be a large bag or a suitcase, like an envelope. Oh, and I forgot. I circled it because down at the bottom it tells me what it is. An article such as a pouch, case, or shield made of cleaned, dried rawhide. So it is a large bag or suitcase like envelope to store and carry their clothing. So is it traveling, or is it how they what they traveled with? They were easy to store inside the teepees and could be hung from teepee poles. They could also be stacked on a travois for moving. A travois is a type of sled used by native people to carry goods consisting of two poles joined by a frame and drawn by a horse or a dog. Okay. So they moved on these. So far, I know that the topic is travel. I was right. This is all about travel. So if I go back to my questions, is this describing or telling me about something? Absolutely. This article is telling me all about how the Native Americans traveled. The Indians who lived on the plains traveled a lot, following the herds of buffalo and moving seasonally to areas with good supplies of other foods. So why did they travel a lot? Because they followed herds of buffalo. So that tells me a little bit about their food. It tells me a little bit about maybe their clothing, because it said that this came from hides. So maybe they used buffalo hides. It says they didn't use carts or wagons, but instead made a travois to carry their belongings. 2 long poles were tied together, and a person could hold the ends of the poles over their shoulders. The other ends of the poles would drag on the ground. Teepees, clothing, and other items were packed and tied onto the poles. Parfleches, full of food and tools, were tied on top. For many years, Indians used dogs to pull travois poles that were fastened to a harness made of strips of rawhide. After the Spanish ships brought horses to the New World, the Indians used horses to pull the travois piled with their belongings. Children could ride on top of the load. Some tribes made small pole carriages on top of the travois for young children to ride in so they wouldn't fall off and get hurt during travel. People living near lakes, rivers or lakes built small boats from whatever was available. They used reeds, sewn skins, hollowed out tree trunks, or tree bark. Most canoes were steered with wooden paddles. On rivers where the water was too fast or too shallow, the canoe could be carried across the land for a ways or portaged. So carried across the land means portaged. So if I had to answer my question, how is the author organizing this information? I would say that the author organizes the information using description to describe what the Nez Perce traveled using. So if I had to come up with 2 details or 2 main ideas, I know that I learned that first they used parfleche. They traveled with travois, and they used small boats. So how did the Nez Perce get around? They packed all their belongings in parfleche and stacked those on travois so that they could move from one place to another. If they lived near rivers or lakes, they built small boats. I want you to do the same for handout 6E and 6F.